The British Museum is facing mounting pressure from social media users in Chile, demanding the return of a stone monument stolen from Easter Island. The controversy surrounds two Moai statues originally from the Chilean territory of Rapa Nui or Easter Island, which were acquired by the museum in 1868. The online campaign gained momentum after a Chilean influencer encouraged his followers to inundate the museum's Instagram posts with comments advocating for the repatriation of the Moai statues. The British Museum responded by deactivating comments on a particular social media post. The museum has presented a flimsy defense of why it continues to keep these important Chilean cultural figurines. A spokesperson had told the BBC that such debates must be balanced against the need for safeguarding considerations, especially where young people are concerned. The controversy follows a similar global debate as last year's Greece's Prime Minister called for the return of the Parthenon sculptures, also known as the Elgin marbles, from the British Museum. Not just this, we're also very well aware of the British looting an endless amount of wealth from the Indian soil and also placing it in the British Museum. As we take this discussion further, we're going to ask a very common question: what is British in the British Museum? But first, let's take you through some graphical details on this big story to help put things in a bit more context for you on our discussion today. So let's first tell you about this particular Moai statue and what makes it special. Now, it was carved between 1250 and 1500 AD by the Polynesian settlers on the Easter Island. You can see statues there. The purpose of carving these statues was believed to represent deceased ancestors, powerful chiefs, a lineage status symbol. So that was obviously the purpose and the significance of these statues. There were nearly 900 statues which were carved. Many, in fact, are still standing today. The volcanic tuff from Rano Rakau, an extinct volcano crater, was the material which was used for building the statue, carving it. And it was carved and transported using sophisticated techniques, and this despite the limited tools that were available. It was erected on ceremonial platforms, facing the inland, of course, except for a few which were facing the sea. Most of them all faced inland. Now, the mystery was that the exact method of transporting and erecting the massive statues still remains debated. The exact technique, obviously, is still, many theories still exist about that. The significance, once again, let me tell you about this, was that the Moai, of course, are a powerful symbol of Rapa Nui's history and culture, attracting visitors from around the world to come and see these statues themselves. Now, the British involvement over here was that there was crew from HMS Topaz, a British survey ship which had arrived at the Easter Island. And here, the Hoa Hakana, one of the statues, was discovered in a stone house. It was dismantled as well, and later it was found at Matevari and was collected first. Commodore Richard Powell was the one who decided to take both these statues to Britain, and the British Museum acknowledges the significance for the Rapa Nui community and seeks collaboration as well. That's where it stands currently, as you can see, at the British Museum. So clearly, of course, taken from the island and is currently housed at the British Museum. Remember, it's not the only thing, though, that the British have taken from anywhere in the world. Could we please play out this graphic again and just hold for a second? So clearly, of course, there are many other things that the British have also looted, which we know. The most famous for us in India, of course, the Kohinoor diamond, which I was just showing you. Could we please go back to that slide 1 second? The world's largest known diamond, the Kohinoor diamond, currently in the British crown jewels, of course, and there you can see it pictured. Let's go to the next slide now and tell you more about what else the British have taken from the world and, of course, from India as well. The second largest known cut diamond, currently in the British crown jewels, also the Great Star of Africa diamond as well. Tipu Sultan's ring, something else that was taken away. A ring with a large emerald surrounded by diamonds. It's currently in the British Museum as well, where that statue which I just showed you was. The peacock throne of the Mughal Empire. This also is there. A throne made of gold and precious stones melted down by the British East India Company in the 19th century. Also, the Darya-e-Noor diamond was taken by the British, the world's largest known pink diamond, currently in the Iranian National Jewels collection. The Orlov diamond as well, a large white diamond with a blue tint. It's currently in the Kremlin Armory Museum in Moscow. The Dara Shikoh's library, a collection of over 2,400 manuscripts, including works of philosophy, poetry, history, currently, of course, also taken away. Amravati marbles as well, a collection of marble sculptures. That too was, of course, taken away. So clearly, of course, as you can see, a lot has been taken away by the British. And of course, this is the latest scandal, which has, of course, been ignited by this influencer who has asked the statue, the Moai statue, to be returned from the British Museum to, of course, where it originated from. Adit Kothari is joining us live, international affairs expert on the broadcast. We also have Ambassador J.K. Tripathi, former diplomat, live with us. Pathikrit Pine, international affairs expert, joins us live as well. Let me make a start with you first, Adit Kothari, on this post that, of course, has gone completely viral, Adit. What do you make of it, and what do you make of this statue that currently is at British Museum?
Udaji, I think you began your show by asking a very pertinent question. What is so British about the British Museum? Unfortunately, the answer to that is the British loot and the predatory colonial nature of how the British Empire essentially ran itself. I mean, there is a moral obligation at the end of the day for the British Museum to essentially have conversations with all of the countries that it actually houses the materials from. It houses over 9 million artifacts at this point, 90% of which are not even recorded or documented from a procurement perspective. So at the end of the day, these are ill-gotten stolen items. And by any stretch of imagination, law states that a thief shouldn't be allowed to keep any ill-gotten stolen items, no matter how much the thief has essentially reinvented himself or how much better he has essentially become as a human being. So similarly, these are difficult and very pressing conversations for the British Museum. But the argument that they essentially present are that these are available for everybody to essentially come and see them under one roof, understand about the history of them, and there is one place that essentially houses them. So imagine that, the argument that the British Museum is presenting is that a child from either India or from Africa has to travel all the way across the seas into the British Museum to learn about their own history, about their own colonial heritage, about their own civilization. So that is the argument that the British Museum and their advocates are essentially presenting. Very difficult conversations to have. I think Rishi Sunak, you mentioned that he was meant to have a conversation with the Greek Prime Minister about the Elgin marbles sometime last year. He in fact didn't even end up going to that particular meeting. So I would shudder to think what would imagine had Prime Minister Modi invoked such a conversation, such a pressing conversation to maybe return the Tanjore Shivas or the 500-year-old Bihar bronze statues back to India, and what would Rishi Sunak then do at that point of time? So these are very pressing conversations, but at the end of the day, that process of returning back the artifacts stolen from India or from the various colonies has not been triggered in Britain. It has started in France, 2017. We all remember, the visuals from Macron essentially saying that, Africa is essentially a prisoner of European colonialism, and as a consequence, he actually returned, some of the artifacts that were stolen from Benin. That did open up a debate, but it never came back to sort of haunt the British museums and the other museums in New York, in Germany, in France as well, the Louvre, for example. Udayji.
Yes, sir. Let me, in fact, take that across to Ambassador J.K. Tripathi as well. Ambassador Tripathi, clearly, of course, this is a debate which has now erupted, after this Chilean influencer's post. Many people bombarding the online pages of the British Museum asking for items to be repatriated, particularly this statue.
Certainly, it is not only, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is just a small part of the problem. The whole problem is not these statues which had been taken away by the surveyors in 1857 to British Museum, but in general, wherever British were or wherever European colonial powers ruled, they looted the country. They looted their colonies, and they took all those things to Britain. Now this you are enumerating some of the items which British had taken from India. I have some more things, Sultanganj Buddha, then Tipu Sultan's ring, perfume, tiger, Shah Jahan's wine cup, nephrite jade, Ranjit Singh's throne, you said, 14th century granite, Nandi, Amravati marbles, departure of Buddha, 2200 BC, sword of Aurangzeb, 1680, marble statue of Ambika, Kohinoor, Ganesha, Surya, Lakshmi, lion capital of Mathura, Ashok pillars, Ashok's inscriptions part, many things. There are hundreds and hundreds of Indian things that British had looted. It is, it has been, it has never been legally uh, added to British museums. It was either a result of plunder by British colonialists or a result of theft by people involving some Indian people, obviously, theft and export to Britain. The argument that British Museum is putting up is very lame argument. It cannot sustain. Just to say that it is up to everybody to see and appreciate and study. Well, all these countries, they have a bigger civilization. They have older civilization, much older than what British have. So they have all the rights to get all these artifacts back so that their people can see it there. And also it is their national heritage. Why should you divide any country of its national heritage just because you wanted to see to a couple of a handful of British people? This is obnoxious. This is ridiculous. If I mean, I can present a situation. Had this case been other way around, British artifacts in other cities, other countries' museums, then British would have run the havoc. It is not. It is a very lame argument, and I I congratulate Chilean people for having this Instagram campaign, and I plead to all Indians to do the same. We are 140 million people. We are 140 crore people, and if we do it, British will be bound to do it. And there are documented records that some of the things British looted, Kohinoor from Ranjit Singh, and other things which were excavated, they were taken back very happily with British because they were the lords. So I think this is not done in modern times, and not only the Indian government but Indian people at large should also unite and ask for these artifacts to be returned immediately, unconditionally, and without any lame excuses made by the British Museum. Yes, over to you.
Okay, let me go back to Pathikrit Pain. Pathikrit, what do you make of this, this social media post which has just gone viral? It obviously shows the sentiment that still exists today. These artifacts may be housed in the British Museum, but obviously there is still sentiment that they need to be returned back to their original place.
Uday, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, Uday. Good evening. See, Uday, Adit mentioned it very rightly that British museums are, memories and living examples of British loot and plunder. There is nothing called a British culture. There is nothing called a British heritage. So their heritage is basically of all that they have looted. So I think all the members of the Commonwealth of Nations, those 56 countries, should together raise their voice against this nation of looters, which now give lectures to the rest of the world about tolerance, equality, human rights. So everything that the British have not done, they ask others to do. Let me tell you one thing. There is this narrative that the British run nowadays, and they have been doing it for quite some time, that look, past is past. Let's start afresh. They would also say that these are better protected here. These are rubbish. I'll tell you the reason. Why did they loot? That is something we need to understand. Yes, these are exotic things. These are incredible pieces of art. But there is something more profound than this. Let me tell you, I'll quote somebody called Vijay Kumar. He's the co-founder of an organization called India Pride Project, which has been working with government of India to bring back several artifacts from various countries. And he says, I'm quoting him, he says that I find it insulting that idols of God or divine body are openly auctioned at cocktail parties and end up in private bedrooms and gardens. And it happens very frequently. So you have a segment which is in the museums, and a large part of it still gets auctioned across the world. They are put up in gardens, they are put up in bedrooms. Why have they looted? First of all, as I mentioned, because they were valuable, something that the British have never seen. Secondly, when you take away symbols and signs of a country's, of a nation's civilizational heritage, the successive generations lose their identity. The successive generations lose their pride. The successive generations lose their sense of origin. And then it was easier for the British to tell them, look, embrace the British way of life. Embrace the British culture. Embrace, because we are better. What you had was rustic, rudimentary, and uncivilized. That is why they did it. So today we have seen a profound revolution that is happening in India, a manthan going on, where we are embedding our technological development, economic development with our ethos, culture, tradition, heritage, civilizational past, led by the Prime Minister of the country. And if we have to continue this movement, then it is important for us to bring back all that has been looted. Don't expect the British to give back the $45 trillion that they have plundered from us, because they have lost it all, because they are I don't want to use any unparliamentary word, but at least those symbols and signs. Can you imagine, Uday, there are hundreds and thousands of sculptures of Nataraj or Saraswati. They are so badly explained in the blogs written by the British people. For them, something which is divine for us, something which has a spiritual connect with us, it is just something for them. It is not even a piece of art. They look at it in a different manner altogether, which I perhaps finding it difficult to even explain. So their ability to appreciate other cultures was the profound foundation because of which they thought that it was their right to colonize others. And even today in the British schools, it is taught that they did the best thing by colonizing them, because as per them, it was all about civilizing them. So let's understand the perspective. Even today, Uday, if you go to any British school, they are not apologetic about what they have done. They think that they have done the right thing. Therefore, it's a long-drawn battle. I think India is far better placed as a country because of our diplomatic outreach and growing economic power. But there are many other countries. They may not be economically so strong, but their culture was rich and that has been looted. So if they have to revive themselves, they have to bring back those symbols and tell to the successive generations that this is what was yours. This is what we had. And therefore, I think a movement has to be started. India must take the lead if it's possible.
Okay, let me take that to Himanshu Bhatt as well at this point. Himanshu, clearly, there is a movement now which is beginning. After this Chilean influencer put out this post, perhaps there is a need for a movement for other artifacts as well, many which have also been looted from India and are still housed in British museums.
Coming to that, because I was listening to Ambassador, I was listening to Parikrat, and what they said, I'm not going to repeat.
Yes.
But what I'm going to say is, see, they stole, they looted 45 trillion, which they are not going to return. They think their civilization is very, very big and their civilization is the best. But let me tell you, Bharatiya Sanskruti writes about everyone that everyone knows. Now, here, I'll give you an example which might sound a little funny, but on a single call of our Prime Minister going to Lakshadweep and giving a message, Maldives was shut. It's finished. That is the power of Bharatiya media, social media. What you said, why shouldn't we get our artifices back? If Chileans can do it, Bharatiya can also do it. Nataraja, Saraswati Devi, Kohinoor, let's get them back. And then, let's not mince words for this. Let's not get into their, this so-called English jazzism, where they'll talk of all fancy things, everybody can have a look at here. No, sir. This is Bharatiya Sanskruti, we want it in Bharat. And Bharatiya Sanskruti needs to be studied in Bharat. It's as simple as that. And they should be told in no uncertain terms. Because what is happening is, in UK, or for that matter in London, so many people still see a person sitting behind the Prime Minister of Britain, whoever it is. And that is the representative of Mayor of London. And that takes the final decisions. Why I am bringing this point up here with this is, Britain is not what it was. There are other things going on in Britain, and we feel as Bharatiyas, as Hindus, as Sanatanis, that our artifices which are there may not be safe in British Museum. And we have to take cognizance of that, and whoever it is, let it be Rishi Sunak, why not? He is Bharatiya, he'll understand this better. The sentiment of Bharatiyas. Tell them and flood them the way Chileans have done. Let's start flooding them with Instagram posts. Let's start flooding them with Facebook posts. Let's start flooding them with social media. See, we can do it with Canada on certain issues. We can do it with Maldives, and we can do it with these British museums also. That is my take on this. Because so many people have said so many things, and they are all relevant. What is left is this. This is what I feel. We need to start that. Yes, Uday.
Right. Let me also, in fact, take that to Adit Kothari. Adit, is there a need for a further movement now? As we were saying earlier, how much of the British Museum is actually British? This one post has gone viral. Perhaps it's time for more. Will a social media, and then the big question, will a social media movement lead to any traction or results?
I think it will. The moment the collective society of India rallies behind a movement like this, it will definitely ruffle feathers, because I live in London. I see people, I talk to people. People suffer from a very, very acute sense of historical amnesia. They do not know the evils of colonial legacy. People think that colonialism had a positive impact on the colonies, because the argument is often presented by historians that had Britain not colonized these countries, these countries would have been in far worse conditions. That was an argument that was dislodged by Dr. Shashi Tharoor when he came down to London and presented that very well articulated debate at the Oxford Union, and where that 45 trillion figure essentially came from. So that 45 trillion figure was essentially calculated by Columbia University Press, who did an analytical study of how systematically the British had looted India since the Battle of Plassey. If you go into where Robert Clive used to live, it's in a small place called Shropshire, and his house is called the Clive of India's house. And you will be amazed to see the kind of plants, the kind of trees that were essentially uprooted from India and planted in Britain. They are taking care of it. But at the end of the day, this is all part of the loot legacy system that Robert Clivett essentially institutionalized in India. So, coming back to your point, Udaiji, if the collective society rallies behind a movement like this, I see absolutely no reason why the British Museum or the polity will not fall into line to actually have these compelling and pressing arguments and discourse. Udaiji, thank you.
Yes, okay, let me then leave the last word to Ambassador Tripathi on where this movement will head next.
Can you go it again?
Where do you believe this movement will head next? The last word to you, Ambassador Tripathi.
No, this movement should be started, but I must say, I must warn that it should not be a take or break sort of situation. It should not affect our bilateral political relations, which are more important for us. It should be, this movement should be parallelly, it should be started and it should gain momentum. And for those people, for those of compatriots who think that, okay, since there is an Indian-born Prime Minister in 10 Downing Street, things will be easier for us. Let me warn them that Indian-born Prime Minister has taken oath for loyalty to the crown, not to India. So we should not over depend on the current leadership of British Parliament. But at the same time, as I said, it should not be take or break, but we should put and we should not only India, but India should take lead, and India should ask all other with all other such countries, especially in Asia and Africa, to raise the voice so that then the deaf ears of British can get the sound and can get what other ex-colonies want. Yes, Uday.
All right, my thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.